Hello, welcome everyone. This is the Impeach and Remove Digital Town Hall featuring Congressman Green. This digital town hall is being hosted by Free Speech for People and Women's March. We're going to get started in just a second. Welcome to each and every one of you. It's been so great to be reading the chat and see all the different folks who are tuning in from all across the country, from Wisconsin to Alabama, to South Carolina, to Ohio, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Hello, everyone. We're so thrilled to be tuning in virtually with you all in this very important moment in time for in our country. I'm Alexandra Flores-Quilty. I'm the campaign director of Free Speech for People. We are a national, nonpartisan nonprofit dedicated to defending and strengthening our democracy. And we are co-hosting this town hall with Women's March, and as I'm sure you all know, is an incredible national mobilization organization dedicated to building a multiracial democracy that works for all of us. And of course, we're so thrilled tonight to be joined by Congressman Green of Texas, a courageous champion for democracy in the U.S. Congress, who has introduced articles of impeachment against Donald Trump for his grave abuses of power. Tonight, you're going to hear from Congressman Green directly about his articles of impeachment and why it's so important that we hold this dangerous tyrant, Donald Trump, accountable. We're also going to hear from John Bonifaz, who is the president of Free Speech for People. John is a constitutional lawyer and attorney, and we're going to hear from him how impeachment works, the case for Trump's impeachment, and why we can't wait. We're also going to hear from Rachel O'Leary Carmona, Executive Director of Women's March, about the movement for impeachment and how each of one of us can take action right now, starting tonight, and why us taking action and building this movement is so important for our democracy. There's also going to be time for you to ask questions and get those questions answered. So we invite you to submit questions all throughout the program. And after the speaker's remarks, we're going to turn over to the Q&A, and you're going to get a chance to hear the speakers share their responses to your questions. So please submit those. We really want to hear your thoughts and what questions you might have. And again, thank you to everyone. It's so inspiring to see all these folks tuning in from across the country. I know that this is being live streamed on several different platforms. And, it's so important that we come together in this dark time in our democracy as our Constitution and our communities are under attack. But as we have learned from history and those who have come before us, it is times like these when it's most important for us to come together and take responsibility for our democracy and our country. Donald Trump has committed dozens of serious impeachable offenses, violating the Constitution and wreaking havoc on our democracy. But we are here tonight joining together digitally because we want the lawlessness and the chaos to end. He must be held accountable, and it's up to all of us to save our democracy. So with that, I'm so honored to get to introduce Congressman Green, who has bravely stood up against the tyranny of the Trump administration and introduced articles of impeachment. And so with that, I'll turn it over to our honored guest, Congressman Green of Texas.
Well, thank you very much for your very fine and warm and kind introduction. I'm honored to be with you. I'd also like to thank some of the persons who are on with us, especially Attorney John Bonifaz. He and I have been working together on these articles and many others in the past. The Women's March, I'm very much familiar with your good work and honored that you would be a part of this. And I think I should also mention Alexandra for her very kind introduction and setting the stage for this evening's event. For those who do not know, I think it would be good to give you a little bit more of an introduction. I'm a son of the segregated South. The laws that were enshrined in the Constitution to protect me, to benefit me, my friends and neighbors denied me. I know what invidious discrimination looks like. I know what it sounds like. I know what it smells like. And I know what it hurts like. It has been something that I've experienced, not something that I've read about. And as a result, when I see it, I always want to confront it as best as I can. I have been blessed to be a member of Congress now for approximately 20 years. I am not a person who at birth would have been designated or prognosticated to be a member of Congress. I am a person who was probably thought to be one of those persons who would probably have some sort of record that would not be favorable to my acquiring gainful employment. I say this to you because I want you to know that I'm a very sincere person about what I'm doing. Um, this is not something that I take lightly. It is something that I do with intentionality, and it is something that I believe is necessary to protect democracy. Alexandra said it quite well. I'll reiterate that this is something that we who believe in the Constitution, we who believe in the notion that there is a right to due process in the Fifth Amendment, we who believe that you should have a separation of powers, and that judges, the opinions of judges should be appealed, and you should not impeach judges because they don't give you favorable rulings. We who believe in these things and other things associated with power that is accorded the President of the United States such that it should not be abused, we are the people who have to take a stand. And I'm appreciative that there are thousands of people on with us. And I'm also cognizant of the fact that if we have thousands of people on, some of them are probably not persons who would agree with all that will be said tonight. I understand. Hopefully, we'll convert some people, and hopefully, we'll also cause some other people to understand that there are people who are going to take up this fight and will do it with alacrity. It will not be done haphazardly, capriciously, and arbitrarily. It will be done with intentionality. I said these things. Now, this is news that is breaking. You will be among the first to hear what I'm about to say. So please fasten your seat belts, because I told John, if I may call him such, he and I have a very good relationship. I'm Al, he's John. I told him that I was working on additional articles of impeachment, and I am. And I'm just going to read to you what I call the style. It is really what they're about in a very simple one sentence statement. Uh, this is a resolution for the impeachment of Donald John Trump as President of the United States. Now, these are new words. They've not been spoken anywhere publicly before. Impeaching Donald John Trump, President of the United States, and James David Vance, Vice President of the United States, for high crimes and misdemeanors. I'm working currently on the second set of articles, which may have to be separated in two sets, one set with two separate articles of impeachment. But I think that J.D. Vance and the President, Donald John Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, have done other things that merit impeachment that are not covered in the articles that are currently on file. I'm not going to go into them tonight. There are many persons who are eager to know what they will contain, I'm sure of it, and there will be an appropriate time to address the content at a later night when we have another visit, perhaps. But for now, I'll talk to you about the articles that have already been filed. And these articles, I think, friends, are articles that address the egregious actions that the Trump administration has taken in flouting the orders of courts, federal courts, including the Supreme Court. These articles of impeachment address the way the Trump administration literally has ignored or decided to just not honor court orders, federal court orders. And I would ask that you read them, HRES 415, 415. I would ask that you read them. It's a short read, and if you read them, I think you will find that everything is factual that's contained in the articles of impeachment. We address the issue of the Supreme Court having given an order for the Trump administration to facilitate the release, return of a person that was seized in our country, taken to another country without due process. And the Trump administration seems to think that this is something that is appropriate. We don't have to have names for this. We have to talk about the actions that are taking place. The person is important, but it's the lack of constitutional process that's most important, because this doesn't apply just to one person, it applies to all people. This right to due process is simply this: your opportunity to say, hey, you have the wrong guy. I'm not the person. You should have that opportunity to just raise your hand and say, look, not me, someone else, or not me, I wasn't there. Not me, here's my reason, my rationale for saying not me. The Supreme Court issued an order for this to be done. To date, it has not been done. The Trump administration has found ways to continue to flout the orders of the federal courts at a lower level, and in so doing, to avoid having it get back to the Supreme Court for a final ruling. The Supreme Court has made several announcements. The Chief Justice himself announced to President Trump that you have to appeal things, that you don't impeach judges because you don't agree with them. We've had a judge to explain to federal judge, to President Trump, that if you don't agree with a decision of the court, even if it's wrong, you have to appeal it, even if it's something that you don't agree with, and in your best mind you think that it's something that is wrong, totally wrong. You have to appeal it. And we've had another judge to explain to the Trump administration that they've done something that is contemptible, that they could be held in contempt, but this judge is giving a second chance, maybe a third chance. The point is, these judges are pleading with the Trump administration to just follow the law, and they have been perspicuously clear as to what the law is. They have left no doubt as to what should be done and why it should be done. Finally, I would mention that I found the president's commentary about federal judges to be most egregious. I think that it demeans the judiciary, that it disrespects the separation of powers, the notion that there is another branch of government that is independent, and it encroaches upon the independence of the federal judiciary in such a way as to not only demean, but to somehow, if at all possible in his mind, belittle the federal judges. These are some of the things that I've given to you by way of these articles of impeachment. I trust that you will read them and you will find much more explicit language available to you. I was told to be as terse and laconic with my commentary as possible. I have spoken in language that is very much general. But finally, my final comment, my grandfather was a preacher, and ministers always have two closings, maybe sometimes three, but tonight I'll just have two. This is my final closing statement. I believe that articles that we've already filed, 415, are both there for removal, but also to act as a deterrent. I think that we focus, as we should, on removal. That's important, and to have a vote for removal. That's very important. But also, while they're pending, they act as a deterrent. And I see them similar to what Cicero wrote about when he spoke of the mythical king that had a courtier by the name of Damocles. This leader wanted to give Damocles the experience of what it's like to have great decisions to make, and how making the wrong decision can cause you great harm. So he had a sword suspended by a single strand of hair above this courtier, jester, if you will, such that he would sit on the throne and experience what it would be like if that one strand of hair happens to break and the sword should then fall upon him. That's what these articles are, 415. Currently, they are what I call a sword of democracy, hanging over President Trump's head. And he knows that at any minute we can call these for a vote. But he also knows that if he goes a step further, he's already defying war court orders, but he's doing it in such a way as to be somewhat clever. But he knows that if he goes one step further, it makes these articles even more important. So I see them as a sword of democracy, similar to the sword of Damocles, hanging over his head, sort of daring him to go further, and also knowing that we will still file the articles. Doesn't matter what he does, what he's already done is impeachable. So he's not going to be able to somehow circumvent these articles being voted upon. I don't have any sense as to who's going to support them, who's not going to support the articles. I filed them. I do what I perceive to be not just the right thing, but the righteous thing. And then I give persons the opportunity to respond as they deem appropriate. I do this as a matter of conscience, and I ask that my friends respond in a similar fashion. I thank you one and all for giving me this opportunity to be heard, and I think that this movement that you have facilitated is one that is growing with a great degree of rapidity, and I think that when we file these articles, I think that will enhance the movement itself, but it will also send a message to President Trump that we are very serious about what we're doing. Thank you very much, and I welcome any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Congressman Al Green, for just joining us this evening and taking the time to speak to these articles of impeachment, to speak to the moment that we're facing in our democracy. We're incredibly grateful for your courage and leadership that is so necessary right now as we face so many attacks undermining the rule of law, and also attacks on our communities with literally life or death consequences that come from this administration. As the congressman said, that we'll have a chance to hear him and the other speakers answer our questions. So please do continue to submit your questions ahead of time in the Q&A. We're now going to turn over and hear from John Bonifaz. John is the president of Free Speech for People, and he is also a constitutional attorney. And we're going to hear from him about the case for impeachment and how impeachment works. So excited to turn it over to John.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you so much, Congressman Green, for your remarks. You are an American hero, a champion for our democracy and for our Constitution. We're honored to have you participate in this national town hall. Thank you to Women's March, our partner in co-hosting this town hall, for all of your leadership in the defense of our democracy. And thank you to all of you, thousands of you who have tuned in all across the country for this critical discussion on how we defend our democracy and invoke the impeachment power, which is so critical at this moment in our history. The framers understood that we would not be a nation governed by a monarch or a tyrant. And for that reason, they set up three co-equal branches of government when they established the Constitution. Article 1, the article of the Constitution establishing the U.S. Congress. Article 2, establishing the presidency. And Article 3, establishing the judiciary. Three co-equal branches of government. No kings in America. But the framers also knew that there might come a day when a rogue president would trample on the Constitution, trample on the rule of law, commit multiple abuses of power, high crimes, crimes against the state, and that president would need to be impeached and removed from public office. And so they set up an extra guardrail in our Constitution, Section 4 of Article 2, the impeachment clause. And that is why we are here today. We face today a lawless president in Donald Trump. He has trampled on the Constitution. He has trampled on the rule of law. He has committed multiple abuses of power since assuming the office of the presidency. Congressman Green is absolutely right in the articles of impeachment he's already introduced to focus on Donald Trump's defiance of court orders, his usurping of the judiciary's authority. Again, three co-equal branches of government. He does not have the power to ignore judicial rulings, certainly not the power to ignore a 9-0 ruling of the United States Supreme Court, which makes clear in the case of Mr. Abrego Garcia that he must facilitate his return to the United States from that foreign torture prison to which he was sent by Donald Trump and this administration. He has defied court orders with respect to the freezing of public funds, funds that have been appropriated by Congress, and orders to lift those freezes and have those public funds allocated for which they've been appropriated. He's defied those court orders. He's defied court orders with respect to the sending of two planes to El Salvador with Venezuelan immigrants on those planes, and the federal judge ordering that they be turned around to the United States. He defied those court orders. The list goes on with respect to his defiance of the judiciary, and this is a high crime, a crime against the state, and impeachable offense for which he must be held accountable through the impeachment process. But the list of abuses of power goes on beyond that. He has engaged in illegal kidnapping and detention of immigrants, sending them, removing them from U.S. soil to foreign prisons. He has unconstitutionally usurped Congress's powers, most importantly through the appropriation process that Congress has to appropriate funds. He's decided he's going to freeze those funds and not allocate them to which Congress has appropriated them to be allocated. He has abused his power to seek retribution against his perceived adversaries. He's fired hundreds of FBI agents and hundreds of Department of Justice officials who solely were focused on doing their job and investigating and prosecuting him for the crimes that he had committed with respect to the January 6th insurrection and with respect to the classified documents scandal. He goes ahead and summarily has them fired because he perceives them as his adversaries. An abuse of power, an impeachable offense. He has co-opted and dismantled independent government oversight, firing the inspectors general of 17 different government agencies who are there by statute, by congressional statute, to deal with waste, fraud, and abuse that may occur in those agencies. Why has he had them fired? So that they can engage in waste, fraud, and abuse without any scrutiny. An abuse of power, an impeachable offense. He has unlawfully imposed tariffs. As we know, some courts have already ruled these to be unlawful. He doesn't have the power to declare this kind of emergency and engage in issuing these kinds of tariffs. This is a power only Congress has. An abuse of power, an impeachable offense. He has engaged in violating the foreign and domestic emoluments clauses of the Constitution, which makes clear that he shall not profit from any foreign government or any state government or the United States government. And yet he has not divested from his business interests all over the world, treating the Oval Office as a profit-making enterprise at the public expense in violation of those clauses. An abuse of power, an impeachable offense. He has unconstitutionally usurped local and state authority, demanding that they help carry out his mass deportation policy. Local and state authorities have no business being engaged in the federal immigration policy. This is an abuse of power, an impeachable offense. He has abused the emergency power at the southern border, declaring that there has been an invasion of immigrants at the southern border. There's no invasion. And through this claim of emergency at the southern border and this declaration of emergency power, he has sent thousands of military troops to the border. This is an abuse of power, impeachable offense. He has abused the pardon power, pardoning 1,500 plus of his fellow insurrectionists, the insurrectionists that he incited on January 6, 2021, to attack the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. This is a form of self-dealing to further hide any scrutiny of the role he played as the insurrectionist in chief. An abuse of power, an impeachable offense. He has deprived citizens of their birthright, declaring via executive order that birthright citizenship shall be removed. He doesn't have the power to erase a part of the Constitution. This is Section 1 of the 14th Amendment. He doesn't have the power to do this. And yet he claims somehow by executive fiat, by executive order, he can do it. This is now 3 separate courts have declared it unconstitutional. It's also an abuse of power, an impeachable offense. The list goes on with respect to this lawless president, and he must be held accountable via the impeachment process. This is why we have launched impeachtrumpagain.org, and this is why nearly 600,000 people now across the country have joined us at impeachdonaldtrumpagain.org to call for immediate impeachment proceedings against this president, to call for the impeachment and removal of this lawless president. We invite you to join us if you've not signed our petition at impeachtrumpagain.org to do that today, to sign and invite your friends and neighbors to join us as well. Now, I understand that some people listening might say, well, we've tried this before. We've impeached Donald Trump twice before. He was not convicted, and we need to move on. And the votes are not there in the House. So why are we even discussing this? We have three responses to this question. First, we either have a constitution or we don't. We either have an impeachment clause or we don't. If we do not invoke the impeachment clause at this critical moment in our history, then we are effectively giving up on the Constitution. We refuse to give up on the Constitution. Second, we normalize these high crimes when we do not state them for what they are. They are high crimes. We normalize this misconduct when we do not say that they are impeachable offenses and abuses of power. These are not policy disputes. These are crimes against the state, high crimes for which the framers intended the impeachment clause be invoked. And finally, members of Congress take the same oath that Donald Trump took to protect and defend the Constitution. Congressman Green is standing up and recognizing that oath. He's abiding by that oath by introducing these articles of impeachment, and every other member of Congress must be called upon to do their duty, to follow the mandate of that oath, to stand with Congressman Green, and to demand impeachment proceedings against this lawless president. I thank Congressman Green for his courage, and his leadership. I urge all of us to call on our members of Congress to join him at this critical moment and to stand up and defend our democracy and our Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, for sharing about the case for impeachment. I want everyone to know that at Free Speech for People, there is an incredible team of constitutional lawyers that includes John Bonifaz, who have been working around the clock to track the impeachable offenses by Donald Trump, the continued abuses of power, and track them and keep track of the case for impeachment. And that's what is publicly available to everyone as a resource at impeachtrumpagain.org. So thank you, John, and the rest of the legal team at Free Speech for People for your incredible work to track the abuses of power. And everyone, please, thank you so much for submitting your questions. Everyone who's submitted questions so far, please keep those coming, questions ahead of the Q&A. We're really excited to answer the questions that folks have about impeachment, the case for impeachment, and how we build this movement to impeach and remove Donald Trump. We're now going to hear from Rachel Carmona, the Executive Director of Women's March, about how we all can take action and build a powerful movement that is capable of impeaching and removing Donald Trump from office. So I'm thrilled and honored to turn it over to Rachel.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining tonight. I know it's late, and I know that we're all making choices about where our attention is and isn't when we're on these calls. And so I want to start off with just saying that most people, I grew up in Wisconsin. I'm coming in hot from Amarillo, Texas right now. And so I feel like I live in communities, and I've lived my whole life in places where I never really pictured that I would be in this place. I never pictured that I would be on a webinar with Women's March calling for impeachment, for a third time. Alexandra was in the trenches with us, and I was excited to follow her leadership then. And now certainly a legal mind like John Bonifaz and Representative Green. And I think that so many of us find ourselves in this situation, not only just 2025 writ large, but when we're thinking about, like, is this a position that we support, to say, how did we get here? And I never thought I would find myself here. We've heard on this call about all of the number of impeachable offenses, that we have seen from the Trump administration so far. And they're not matters of policy disagreement. They're not things that we just kind of wish wouldn't happen. They're impeachable offenses. And I think the truth is that we have a rule of law or we don't. We are accountable to it or we're not. And it's important for me. I think a lot about in the work that I do and when we pick up fights at Women's March. What will the story that I'll tell my family or my friends or my loved ones in 10 years and say, well, Donald Trump trampled all over the Constitution and he disappeared people to, countries and whatever. And was I on the couch? What did I do? what was the story about what I did? You know, I want to be able to say, and I fought with everything that I could, you know, and the when my ink ran out, when my digital signature ran out, I grabbed a sign. And when my sign got taken from me, I, you know, put my body on the line, and maybe I get arrested and I bailed out and I did the next thing and the next thing, because that's what resistance takes. Resistance takes emotional discipline. Resistance takes an understanding that we are in here in an ecosystem with each other. It takes community and it takes solidarity. I was just reading a piece that was talking about the difficulty of building coalitions, the difficulty of working in common cause, and someone was talking about you know, basically working with people with whom we disagree, even when we felt like vomiting about it. And there's a lot of 2025 that I feel like vomiting about, but this is one of the pieces that I think is so politically clear. And what is very clear in this moment is that when the history books are written, do we want to be on record having opposed Donald Trump's tyranny and attempted fascist takeover, his authoritarian power grabs, or do we want to say, and we let it slide, and then it was too late? And so I don't want my personal history, I don't want my personal story to be that I let it slide. And I don't want to, in my role with Women's March and as an activist, to say that I was a part of you know, looking the wrong way while this happened. And so I think that, you know, for us, it's about staying locked in and having our eyes on the prize and saying that, like, even though it seems far away, I'm old enough to remember, as the kids say on TikTok, I'm old enough to remember the first call for impeachment of Donald Trump, when people were telling folks that this is politically naive, it's not going to happen, we don't have the votes. And, you know, we went on ahead and we were able to stop significant pieces of harm and damage to our communities, even though we were not ultimately successful at getting him removed. We were able to get him impeached and we were able to slow down. And I will also note two things, two important pieces, because I'm a data nerd. I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I'm not a representative. I am a public policy human and a nerd. And I will say that two things. The first thing is the Trump administration itself is preparing for impeachment. They understand that this is a threat that they're running as a result of their actions. You can Google that, find it. They are preparing for it. This is part of their 2026 spiel. The second part is 52% of Americans support impeachment. That's across political party, and over 80% of Democrats support it. And so what we're talking about here is who are we accountable to? And for me, the question of accountability is central to this conversation. Donald Trump and all of the other co-equal, you know, arms of our legal system, our government system are accountable to the U.S. Constitution, and we're accountable to the law. We are you know, we have rule of law, and we are accountable to that. Women's March is a base that is made up of everyday people, and we are accountable to everyday people. And so when 82% of our base that they say that they are in favor of something, it is not just our mandate, but it is our duty to move forward to try to bring this outcome, to bring this piece of justice, and to bring this this intervention to real life. And so what does that look like? A lot of you are saying you signed a petition. That is a great step. You can sign a petition. You can demand that Congress acts. You can get involved with a political home. You can get more information on womensmarch.com. There are actions that are coming up related to both impeachment and related to general you know, tyranny that's been going on in the United States. And there are ways for you to get involved both at, I'm going to ask for the Impeach Again website, because I don't want to give it incorrectly and end up getting stuck with a fake news moniker. And so while all of the appropriate links are going up, and we will have a follow-up email to everyone who RSVP'd and showed up, and those who also didn't, to give all of the information, I want to just share one story that I like to share about volunteering and getting involved. I went to school in Boston. Some of you may be in Boston. Some of you may have heard of the Midnight Ride and Paul Revere. Paul Revere did the Midnight Ride on his volunteer shift. Paul Revere was a very successful silversmith. And so I want you all to understand that movements are made from volunteer shifts and shoe leather. They're made from stuffing envelopes. Change does not happen from behind a podium. It doesn't happen in the ways that we see the pictures. It happens from regular everyday people, like the folks on this call, deciding to make a change and then making that change happen. that's how the change happens. That has been consistent through every social movement in the history of the world. And so I am very happy to be a part of the American tradition here, where we say no to tyranny and we reject the clown show fascism that Trump has brought to DC. And I look forward to the moment where we both impeach and remove him for his crimes against our Constitution and for disgracing our country. And the last thing that I will say is, it's important for us to be involved in the making of history in real time, because while the story of Paul Revere is amazing, years later, after I started telling it, this has been one of the things that I talk to with volunteers and members all the time for decades. What I found out is that there were also women who made the Midnight Ride. But women didn't write history, and they got written out of the story. And so it's important for us to be a part of the history, to own our place in it, to write our own story, and to write our own future, and to make sure it is a feminist future, because feminists historically have been the strongest force against fascists in the world. So I want to thank you all so much for taking your time. You could have done 1,000 other things, and I'm glad you did it. Decided to learn more with us and to get involved with us. And we will be coming at you live and on time with all of the next steps via email, so that you can take action and continue to stay involved in this fight.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Always inspired by Women's March's leadership, and specifically your leadership in helping us create a democracy that is feminist and multiracial and works for all of us. And just want to highlight again that, the way that people can take action is by urging your members of Congress to support impeachment, to support Congressman Al Green's articles of impeachment, and urge them to hold Donald Trump accountable. So you can do that by emailing your representative. There was the URL that was posted there on the slide. And you can sign the petitions with both Women's March and Free Speech for People. And that bit.ly link, so it's the URL link that you can type into your browser to email your representatives. It's bit.ly/43ZVBCM. And I know that was probably a little hard to capture, but that will also be emailed out in the follow-up email for everyone who registered. We're now going to turn it over to the Q&A section. So thank you, everyone, for submitting your questions. We're now going to get a chance to hear from Congressman Al Green, John Bonifaz, and Rachel Carmona to hear their answers to your questions. So the first I'd like to highlight for everyone is actually from someone named Jim, who tuned in and asked about how many votes does impeachment and removal take. And I think that it'd be great just to hear for many of you a little bit more about literally the congressional process for impeachment and removal.
Congressman, you should take that.
I was going to defer to you. Well, in the House, and I like the way President Gerald Ford put it. In the House, he said, impeachment is whatever a majority of the members decide that it is at a given point in history. I'm paraphrasing, but that's in essence what he said. And of course, we can, I believe, get a majority of people to vote to impeach. But I think what's more important is this. We file legislation and vote on it quite often that we don't expect to pass right away. Healthcare took 100 years to develop, thereabout. So I don't buy this notion that you don't do something because you think that you may fail. It is by failing that we succeed. It is by failing that we find out what we need to do to succeed, who we need to work with to succeed. So I'm all for filing these. If I'm the only person that votes for it, I will be very much pleased, because we will have done the right thing. I'll add one more thing that I didn't add earlier. With reference to this articles of impeachment, I mentioned to you invidious discrimination. There is really an underlying racial aspect to this. If you look at who's being approached, who's being removed, just pay close attention to it. There is an underlying racial aspect to it, and that's something that I'm not going to overlook as we move forward. So in the House, you have to have a majority of those voting, and in the Senate, 2/3. I believe we can get 2/3, But I think that, if I may just say this, we must build that momentum now. We build it now so that it becomes an issue in the election. I think that people should ask me, Al, are you going to vote to impeach Trump at a later time? If you get the House, can we expect you to vote to impeach? That's a fair question to ask me. And I think that if you get to that question by building the momentum, I think that what the Women's March is doing, and of course, free speech for people, to help build the momentum. Thank you.
Thank you. Alexander, if I can just add to that very important set of remarks from Congressman Green, that, we hear the diagnosis all the time now from people that this is a dangerous moment for our country, that we're on a march to tyranny, that we're on a march to dictatorship, march to fascism. What we're not hearing after we hear that diagnosis is we're not hearing from many people the remedy. There is a remedy. The framers put it into the Constitution. The constitutional remedy for addressing a tyrant and a would-be monarch in the Oval Office is impeachment. So as Congressman Green has said, we need to build that case for impeachment. We need to do that now, not wait for some other date down the road when we start talking about impeachment. That case needs to be built now, and that's why we're so pleased with the Congressman's leadership. But we do call on all members of Congress to stand up and be part of building that case for impeachment against this lawless president.
John, you used the term before you referenced how he was successfully impeached but wasn't convicted. Can you clarify for folks, just like a bit of education about why the vote in the Senate and the impeachment process is considered a conviction?
Yes. So in the House, as Congressman has stated, that's where the simple majority is needed for passing articles of impeachment. They then get sent over to the Senate for a trial. It's an impeachment trial. And at that trial, evidence is put forward. Witnesses are put forward. Donald Trump will have the opportunity to put his own witnesses forward and have people cross-examine and so forth. But nevertheless, at the end of the process, the senators vote. And in the last go around the insurrection, you had a majority of senators, over 50, voting for conviction, meaning that Donald Trump would be removed. But in order to actually have him removed, 67 senators need to vote, 2/3, as the congressman stated, to formally convict. And so that number was not reached. But it's significant to note that a majority of senators, including Republicans, alongside Democrats, voted to convict. And again, I couldn't agree more with the congressman. The case for impeachment needs to be built now. We should not be waiting, as Rachel has rightly said, for some date down the road of when we decide to stand up. We need to stand up now to this threat to our nation.
And may I add one additional thing, Alexandra? You don't have to have a constitutional crisis to impeach. Many people would believe this because there's constant talk about the constitutional crisis. If we have one, obviously, we should move forward. But it's not necessary to have the crisis. If you see that you have an authoritarian president, that's reason to impeach. We have moved into authoritarianism. Democracy is being supplanted. It is devolving into authoritarianism. And we have to take action now. What we said he would become before the election, John, remember we talked about all of these things that he might do, the dastardly deeds? Well, that's what he's doing. So if we said that these things were impeachable before the election, and we see him doing them now, then we have a duty, a responsibility, and an obligation to act on what we said he would do and what he is doing. It's impeachable.
Thank you.
I would just add one thing, and I'll be brief because I know we have other questions, but I would just say that we've never seen this moment in U.S. history before. And so we are looking at other times of U.S. history that have similarities, and we were looking at other countries that have similarities, but we don't know. And so we could spend the rest of his term in analysis paralysis, or we can start trying to do what we can to harness the powers that we have. And let's be clear, we lost, the judicial branch, a lot of people would say is not really with us right now, the executive, the legislative. And so what we have is people power. And we cannot be afraid to use this people power to encourage the branches of government that are, when we talk about government, we oftentimes hear it as a critique on Democrats, because because Republicans have so thoroughly washed their hands of any plan to govern. And so it is actually on us. This is our mandate as people to hold our representatives accountable across the aisle to make sure that we are all held to the standards of the rule of law and constitutionality.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, John, and thank you, Congressman Green. Maria and Linda and some other folks submitted questions asking, why would impeachment work this time as opposed to the other times in which he was successfully impeached?
Impeachment worked the last time. We forget, I think, that he did not win the election. And impeachment played a role in the victory that Joe Biden brought to fruition. So you may not get all that you want, but you will set the record straight. You will probably deter some additional actions, and you will let people know that the Constitution means something. It's something that we have to protect. If we wait until there is a constitutional crisis, that may be too late. You will be in a full-blown authoritarian system where you'll have an autocrat who has removed the generals from office that were there prior to his arrival. He has put sycophants in place such that the Secretary of State and other persons are going to adhere to whatever he says. He will have all of the pieces of the puzzle in place to be an autocrat with powers very much akin to that of a dictator. Now, I'm not prognosticating that that is going to happen, but you can see the foundation being laid such that it can happen.
Thank you, Congressman Green. Rachel or John, would you like to add anything to that?
Rachel, go ahead. I fully agree with the congressman. I agree that we need to document these high crimes. As I said earlier, we cannot normalize this conduct. It is not a policy dispute, as Rachel highlighted. These are high crimes against the state, and we only name them as high crimes when we invoke the impeachment power, and that's what we must do.
On that, there was a question, what can we do, we as the American people, to pick up the pace on impeaching Trump? Maybe, Rachel, you want to kick us off answering this question.
I think a couple of things. The first thing is that you can join a political home. And there have been a number of, certainly you have heard all of the ways to get involved with the organizations that are on this call, but there have been people in the comments that are saying, join this organization or that organization. And ultimately, I'm organization agnostic. Get in where you fit in, but get in somewhere. Now is not the time to to be out here by yourself. One of the smart people in the movement say, like, it's better to struggle with friends than to face fascism alone. And I very much so agree with that. And I think it's also a time for us to be very real and pragmatic and to understand that, we are running a marathon and we are in a generational struggle. And we need to be thinking about what gets us through that protracted struggle and its relationships and its resources. This is not something that we're going to turn around by 2026. And so we have to be very clear about what we're trying to do. The MAGA project has been 50 years, at least in the making. In the feminist space, I think you could say that, the seeds of MAGA were planted by Phyllis Schlafly in the Eagles Forum in the 70s. And I think when we're moving forward and we're thinking about what we're doing, it's important for us to think about how we sustain our work. It's important for us to think about how we do our work, how our ends are our means, and how we are building a movement that we actually want to be a part of. And so I'm really, other than the trolls who got a boot, shout out to the facilitators who are doing a great job in the comments. I want to say that, like, one of the things that I really appreciate is that we have thousands of people on a call. All of here, everyone is like, how do I get more involved? How do I, et cetera. There's not a lot of the circular firing squads that we see. And I think that, part of what we need to do is really build an irresistible movement that is full of people that we want to spend time with, doing work that we want to be a part of. We can be welcoming and have a lot of different pathways for folks who are getting involved in different stages of understanding, different stages of political and development and education. And right now, what we have to do is to be very welcoming and to get people into the movements that we're doing in this interventions like it. Just because this might not be your intervention doesn't mean there's not another one out there for you. And so I really think it's about finding the right place for you and getting involved and staying involved, building community and digging in for the long haul, and understanding that we're not looking at a 90-day runway to win. We really have to focus and be disciplined and understand that we're in a fight for the soul of our country, and that's not going to be an overnight war.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. I just want to see if Congressman Green wants to also reference Rule 9 and what's involved with that.
Thank you. And I concur with what Rachel has said and what John has said too about these articles of impeachment. What John is literally alluding to is the first reading of the articles. The process necessitates that the congressperson who is the presenter of the articles of impeachment, who has filed them, you have to read them. And once you read them, then there will lapse 2 days, 2 legislative days will have to pass. And thereafter, they'll be read a second time by the clerk. And on this occasion, after the reading, there will be a vote. And the question that everybody wants to have answered is, when will we have that first reading? Because that then gives you some sense of when we'll have a second reading and when we'll have a vote. And as I've said to you, I see these articles as both a deterrent, a means of removal, and I'm working on the second set. And I'd like to file them at some time in the near future. There are a few things that I have to work out. But I'm also feeling the urge myself to move on the articles that are already filed. But I want everybody to be assured that this is not something that has been filed to retreat from. There will be no retreat. We have to do this. If the courts can't get his attention, and he's defying court orders, and if the members of Congress on his side won't do anything, then the only thing left is us on my side and impeachment. This is all that we have. And I hear a good many people saying, do something, do something. Well, this is the something. This is it. This is the something that we can do. And this is the something that we must do. And I appreciate people who have joined the movement. So, I call this the do something movement. This is the movement where you can see something done, and you can see tangible results after the articles are read the second time, because there will be a vote. And I should explain to John this, what he would have me say, I'm sure. If there is a vote to table, and there's likely to be a vote to table, because I've filed impeachment articles multiple times before, laid the foundation the last time with your help. But there'll be a vote to table. Those who vote to table are voting against the articles of impeachment. That's what a vote to table means. Those who vote to proceed, not to lay these articles on the table, they're voting to have them heard. And they're voting to have the actual impeachment itself voted on. Those who vote to table are avoiding having that vote on the actual impeachment. My hope is that everybody will vote to impeach. But my belief is this: you have to do the right thing. Dr. King said the time is always right to do what is right. This is the right thing to do. And let others do what they may. We will do what we must.
Thank you, Congressman. I just want to add, if I may, Alexandra, to that the bottom line here from what we're hearing from Congressman Green is that there will be a vote in the House of Representatives on the floor on his articles of impeachment. And at that time, members of Congress will be forced to decide which side they're on. Are they on the side of defending democracy and our Constitution with Congressman Green? Or are they going to be on the sidelines in the face of this tyranny? And that's going to be the question for each member of Congress. And history will record where they vote. And it's important to note that each time Congressman Green in the first Trump administration introduced articles of impeachment, more and more members step forward to join him. So I think this is an important statement that the congressman's making tonight, and we will see a vote on the House floor. And at that time, members of Congress will be on record where they stand.
And if I may say this, John, you'll be the first to hear that exact date. There are some other persons that I've made commitments to, but none of them supersede your place in this process. You will be the first. And then you can spread it far and wide.
We will. Thank you, Congressman. We will.
You have my commitment. And if I may say this, the second articles of impeachment are important. I'm not going to go into any great detail, but what they are doing in the area of invidious discrimination. I remember I said there's an underlying aspect of this that has a racial aspect to it. And that has to be addressed. That has to be addressed. People of color are living in fear. All Latinos now have been targeted. Show your papers. We just heard the story of the young man driving on his way to soccer match or practice or something, and stopped. The allegation is that there was no probable cause. They just pulled him over and said, "All right, show us your papers." Is that the society we want, where we stop young people and say, "Prove that you are somebody that we can respect"? This is not the way we do business in this country. So I'm going to address that aspect of this in these next articles, because I just don't think I can live in a country where I've had the opportunity to do something and I did nothing. I can't do it.
I would end by saying it's important for us to remember that when we talk about people who are in Congress, or we talk about people who work in the White House, or when you go to school to be a lawyer, you are called a public servant. And when we think about how change has been made historically in this country, it was never that, oh, the people didn't really care, and then the Supreme Court decided in their wisdom and in their morality to pass a new law. No, the people called and demanded for every bit of progressive change that has ever happened in the United States of America. This is not the first time, and we are not at day one. We are also not at the finish line. Folks were saying, when are we going to get done? I don't have the answer for you, but I do know that we'll get done together. That's all I know. The cavalry is not coming. We are enough. We are not at day one, and we're not at the end. And so we're here in a place somewhere in the middle. But what I do know is that they work for us. And so we have to be clear and be willing to use people power. We have to be willing to use all of the tools at our disposal. And we need to be able to call on and hold our folks accountability. But all of this to me is about accountability and about who you're accountable to at the end of the day when you go to sleep and when you look in the mirror, and who they're accountable to when they report to work. So I would just say, do not ever forget, people power is the best power.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you so much, John. And thank you so much, Congressman Green. You all are truly American heroes. I'm honored to be in this fight with you and to follow the leadership of all of you. I'm also honored to be joined by the thousands and thousands of people who are tuning in right now across so many social media platforms to learn about the case for impeachment and how they can take action. I think the one thing I want everyone to know that was shared in tonight's remarks, well, there's a couple of things. One is that there is an impeachment vote coming. Your member of Congress will be soon on record whether or not they support the impeachment of Donald Trump for his abuses of power. And you have between now and that vote to put pressure on them to be on the right side of history. And that is actually our duty as the American people, to hold our elected officials accountable and ensure that they're doing their job. And it is clear that the job of Congress is to ensure that the Constitution is upheld and Donald Trump is violating that. So my ask for every single one of you tonight is to email your member of Congress. You can see there on the screen the short bit.ly URL. If you go to that URL, it gives you a platform where you can email your member of Congress tonight. You can also sign the petition and read about the case for impeachment at impeachtrumpagain.org. And you can also sign Women's March's petition and convey your support for impeachment. When we don't call out these abuses of power, we normalize them. Impeachment is the one tool that we have as a democracy to remove tyrants in power. One of the bedrock differences between a democracy and a tyranny is that there's a lawful process for the people to remove elected officials who threaten the republic. Impeachment is that process. This is the one process. So thank you for everyone tuning in who's helping to take action. We have to urge our representatives to vote to impeach and remove Trump in the upcoming vote and the likely votes that will come in the future. Together, we can end this tyranny and impeach or remove him from office. We can build a democracy that works for all of us. And, Congressman Green earlier tonight said, referenced the civil rights movement, and it made me actually think about a quote from a great civil rights movement leader, Ella Baker. The quote that she had shared during, I think, one of her speeches during the movement was, "We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes." So to honor the words and the wisdom and the legacy of Ella Baker, let us not rest and let us take action today and end this tyranny and chaos. So thank you, everyone. Excited to be with you in this movement to make it a democracy that truly does work for all of us. Thank you, everyone.